It was just after midnight when I heard the knock on my bedroom door. Soft, hesitant, as if the person standing there was unsure of their next move. I found myself uncertain about their intentions as I sat up in bed, my heart racing inexplicably. The reason for my unease eluded me, leaving me in a state of confusion. Waiting for me on the other side of that door, yet an instinct deep within me whispered that this encounter would be anything but ordinary. Our conversation took an unexpected turn that night, and I realized I wasn't prepared for what he asked. It's a question that lingers, one I doubt I'll ever be ready to answer. Have you ever sensed that tightness in your chest, as if the very air around you shifts before a momentous event? It was precisely like that. Everything came to a standstill. The silence in the house enveloped everything, as if even the walls were pausing to catch their breath. My husband was away once more, off on yet another of his seemingly endless business trips, leaving our spacious, beautiful home feeling a bit emptier. Home felt more desolate than ever. Then came the second knock, softer yet equally significant. I felt a surge of confidence and certainty. I already knew it was Joseph, my 19-year-old stepson, quiet and introspective. Always courteous and respectful, yet recently, there has been an intriguing shift in the manner. He gazed at me, a moment of silence stretching between us, as if he were carefully analyzing every detail before uttering a single word. As if he perceived details that others overlooked. And before you form an opinion, before your thoughts wander to unsettling realms, just allow me to share a tale that unfolds in unexpected ways. This narrative doesn't begin with a sudden knock. Rather, it emerges gradually, quietly, and with a sense of anticipation that builds over time. In the quiet, moments where eyes were averted, in the stillness shared between my husband and me, in the manner I faded from view, I once believed I was content. I fulfilled all my obligations, cooking, cleaning, and wearing a smile. When I wore a mask of indifference, claiming I was fine, the truth was that I was slowly fading away inside. Gradually, moment by moment, I believed I was on the right path, only to come to a startling realization. I felt invisible, overlooked by my husband and completely lost within myself, until Joseph entered the picture. I began to observe the subtle re-Roberts he made, like, "You look tired today," or "Did you?" Try a new hairstyle, and the way he mentioned it lacked any flirtation. It was a moment of genuine care. He was truly attentive, and when someone finally notices, it changes everything. After years of feeling unseen, it can truly distort your perception. You begin to doubt everything, not out of uncertainty, but from the weight of your experiences. Desiring chaos, yet yearning for a deeper bond, I hesitated to let anything unfold. I wasn't searching for it. But that night, that knock, that request, it changed everything. There's something I've kept to myself, something I've never shared with anyone, not even him. But now, I feel compelled to reveal it. Perhaps there exists a soul who understands the profound ache of loneliness, a sensation so intense it drives one to actions they never thought possible. Have you ever felt overlooked, yearning for a moment of recognition? If so, stay with me, for there are tales to be told. Of treachery, illicit feelings, and the unguarded essence of humanity resonate within you. Subscribe to the captivating saga of shocking infidelity. Here, We unveil the stories that many are too afraid to share, but we bring them to light for you. Let me share what unfolded next. Robert and I have been married for 8 years, and throughout those years, I believe, I have only truly felt, in those early years of our marriage, the atmosphere between us wasn't always frigid. At the start, he was charming and humorous, often delighting me with takeout on those cozy, rainy evenings. He would wrap his arms around me as I washed the dishes, whispering sweet nothings that made me blush. Yet, somewhere along the way, life pulled him in a different direction. He gradually withdrew, slipping away into the shadows. It wasn't an abrupt departure, but rather a slow fade into silence. Gradual and quiet, each day saw a bit more of him fade away until he was merely a whisper of his former self. He became a presence in the house rather than a partner in my life as he started traveling more frequently and for longer periods. Fewer trips, diminished contact. The phone calls became less frequent, and the "I miss you" texts faded away entirely. Though they were together, his presence felt distant. Even when he was home, he seemed lost in the world of his laptop. Constantly caught in meetings, perpetually fatigued. I have learned to adjust my expectations accordingly. I longed for him to notice when I donned something new. I ceased to hope he'd seek me out at night, and I stopped bringing up the loneliness enveloped me, as each time I reached out, he would simply respond, "I'm doing all of this for us." Yet it never seemed to belong to us. The truth is, I felt like a specter haunting my own abode. It felt as though I was navigating through each day, fulfilling all the expectations of a wife, yet never truly being recognized for who I am. I maintained a tidy home, ensured his shirts were impeccably ironed, and held myself together. Yet, within me, I was slowly coming apart, and that's the essence of solitude. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it merely whispers until you can no longer hear your own thoughts. Then there was Joseph, Robert's son. After his first marriage, he joined us last year to complete his studies. He was always respectful and polite, maintaining a quiet presence himself, yet gradually we began to exchange small moments. Nothing grand, just genuine experiences. He would stay in the kitchen as I brewed my coffee, casually inquiring about how my day was unfolding. Truly engaged when I spoke, his gaze remained focused, never wandering to a phone or a screen. He didn't nod absent-mindedly, lost in his thoughts. Instead, he focused intently, and that alone felt significant. Initially, I attributed it to him being a respectable young man, wondering if perhaps I was mistaken. Just reflecting on my own feelings because I was feeling quite emotionally deprived. But then he began to recall moments I had shared, express how I enjoyed my tea, the flowers that captured my heart, and my aversion to silence in those moments. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry in the living room, he walked in and re-Roberted that you consistently handle everything on your own. Doesn't anyone lend a hand? No one ever has. I expressed that to you previously, not to Robert or anyone else, and it truly took me by surprise. Recall the moment, standing there, with one of Robert's shirts clutched in my hand, fighting back an emotion that felt akin to tears, yet also, it seemed as though being acknowledged was essential. Our home is expansive, perhaps too expansive for just 3 individuals, and it often feels that way. Silence that feels heavy, an emptiness that wraps around you, the sort of stillness that heightens your senses and draws you inward. the scarcity of laughter. The infrequency of genuine affection has transformed into a contemplation of all that is absent. Robert's office is situated downstairs, hidden away like a secret bunker, while Joseph's room lies just across the way. Most nights, we would exchange a nod as we passed each other down the hall, perhaps sharing a brief moment of connection. Night held its usual stillness, yet recently, everything felt transformed. There were lingering glances that spoke volumes. I started to linger, reluctant to let the day slip away. I recall one evening vividly, when I was in the quiet of the kitchen, unable to find rest. I stood alone in the darkness, sipping cold tea and gazing out the window. That's when he arrived. In a moment of quiet surprise, he confessed that he couldn't sleep either. We stood there together. After a moment of silence, he finally spoke, observing, "You seem to carry a hint of sadness at times." I found myself confronted with a statement, and I lacked the energy to refute it. All I could muster was a simple response. "Indeed." He nodded, as if he grasped the situation. I'm uncertain what shifted after that moment, or perhaps the shifts had been occurring quietly in the background, unnoticed by me until now. Yet, there was an undeniable change within me whenever he was near. It felt as though I was simply present, neither nervous nor excited, just observing, as if this moment was unfolding for the very first time. For the first time in ages, someone truly saw beyond the surface. It was never just about appearances. Attraction was not the focus. It was about rediscovering the essence of reality, about feeling significant once more, about knowing I mattered to Robert, had ceased to reach for me years ago, stopped inquiring about my well-being, and no longer called me beautiful. Yet, Joseph, without even trying, he filled the void left by his father. Whenever he entered the room, I instinctively straightened my posture. I'd find myself smiling a bit more as I began to notice the subtle shift in his voice when he spoke seriously. The way he would run his hand through his hair when he felt nervous. Those little gestures that seemed insignificant at first, until they began to hold deeper meaning. Everything I began to crave are conversations. They were innocent, yet they nourished a part of me I hadn't even recognized. Came to the unsettling realization that I was starving, a fear creeping in as I understood that this state was far from normal. Yet I realized that returning to a life of invisibility was no longer an option. And I believe that was the moment the boundary began to take shape. To blur, I haven't crossed it just yet, but I found myself standing right at the edge, allowing myself to feel. I often ponder the sensation of being touched in a way that transcends the physical, reaching deep into the emotional and mental realms, enveloping the entirety of one's being. Someone who truly recognized me, I allowed myself to embrace that. Longing, the one that arises when it dawns on you that despite sharing a bed with someone for years, a profound sense of solitude lingers, and the most painful aspect is, it didn't feel wrong. It felt like awakening, and that thought filled me with a sense of dread. Sunday unfolded like any other, with the afternoon dedicated to my usual pursuits, crafting. The house exuded warmth, a sense of belonging that had faded into the background. The aroma of roasting chicken filled the air as I set the table, lighting a candle to create an inviting atmosphere. I understood that Robert would remain silent about it. It had a gentle cinnamon aroma, the sort that enveloped the kitchen in a cozy warmth, even in the absence of heat. As dinner approached, A palpable tension hung in the air. Robert remained engrossed in his phone, his gaze fixed on the screen, seemingly oblivious to the world around him. As I sat at the table, scrolling through emails, I half nodded in response to his words. I shared my thoughts with him about the neighbor's newly erected fence, a package mistakenly delivered to the wrong address, and a film I had in mind for us to enjoy together. Later, he mumbled something that resembled a soft, never lifting his gaze from Joseph. He arrived at the last moment, as he often did, seemingly hesitant to impose. Yet, when he stepped through the door, his presence was striking. He glanced at me first, a subtle smile gracing his lips. Not a grand gesture, but one that conveyed a quiet acknowledgement, a silent understanding that he saw me. We dined primarily in silence, with only the occasional scrape of a fork and the gentle clink of cutlery breaking the stillness. Robert casually inquired about Joseph's school experience, but the question lacked genuine interest. Joseph responded briefly, and that was the end of it. Once dinner concluded, as I stood to clear the plates, a familiar routine, Robert made his way to the couch, phone still in hand, already halfway lost in whatever world awaited him there. During a work call, I received no acknowledgement, just a fleeting moment as he turned and walked away. Then, I caught the sound of Joseph's voice. Before I could utter a word, he reached for a plate behind me, ready to assist. Our hands grazed for just a fleeting moment, yet it was enough to ignite a spark that felt undeniably electric. As we moved quietly through the kitchen, I felt a gentle rhythm in my chest while rinsing and loading the dishwasher. He accepted, the towel to dry the glasses, leaning against the counter as if searching for the perfect moment. He spoke softly, reminding her that she shouldn't have to face everything by herself. Simple words, yet they carried a weight of understanding. They struck me like a sudden blow to the heart, leaving me momentarily paralyzed, unsure of how to respond. My eyes stung as I concentrated on the soapy water, feigning ignorance to the sounds around me. The ache lingered in my breath. He remained silent, simply continuing to dry his hands. The glass returned to my hand, yet everything in that moment had transformed, as if the words lingered between us, weighted and profound. Later that night, I found myself lying in bed, my gaze fixed on the ceiling. Robert had left. I was flown out to Dallas for a conference, some pitch event that I had long since stopped pretending to care about, when he kissed me. He placed a gentle kiss on my cheek before departing that morning, casually re-Roberting, "Don't wait up," as if I ever truly did. Yet it was Joseph's voice that lingered in my mind, reminding me that solitude shouldn't be my only companion. I had encountered countless hollow reassurances before. There have been many compliments in my life, yet this one stood apart. It transcended mere flattery. The flirtation held a certain truth, one I hadn't fully grasped until it reverberated in my mind. In the early hours, I found myself restless, shifting from one side to the other, my thoughts swirling in a chaotic dance. I couldn't find relief. My chest constricted as if I had ingested something jagged, lodged just beneath my ribs. Then I heard footsteps, slow and careful, as they came to a halt outside my door. I held my breath, anticipation coursing through me. I wasn't sure what I anticipated. Perhaps nothing, perhaps everything. Then came a gentle knock once, then twice. I remained still at first, my gaze fixed on the ceiling, my heart racing. The silence that enveloped the room was shattered by a sound more resonant than the knock itself. Then, I heard his voice, low and hesitant, asking, "Can we talk?" His words were few, just 3, yet they sent a shiver through me. I sat up gradually, drawing the A blanket draped around my shoulders, offering a semblance of protection from the unfolding chaos. Yet silence enveloped me. I remained mute, unable to utter a simple affirmation. I didn't refuse. I simply attuned myself to the rhythm of my own heart, allowing anticipation to guide me. I remained still, at least in the beginning. I sat there, frozen, the blanket wrapped tightly around me, as if it could conceal the turmoil raging within my chest. My thoughts raced uncontrollably. My heart raced, a palpable thrum in my throat, as his voice echoed softly in the hallway, measured and deliberate. On the brink of despair, I felt the urge to reach out. Something within me shattered, compelling me to rise without hesitation. As my feet touched the floor, my conscience remained silent, and I crossed the threshold. As I entered the room, each step felt increasingly burdensome, my hand lingering over the doorknob for just a heartbeat longer before finally turning it and stepping inside. There he was, Joseph. He stood barefoot, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes tired yet clear. In that moment, he didn't resemble a boy. Instead, he appeared as if he were shouldering a burden far too heavy for his years. And yet all I could. "What are you doing?" He didn't respond, and neither did I. We simply locked eyes, lost in the moment. We lingered in a moment that felt uniquely ours. And then he spoke softly. I couldn't sleep. I nodded in response, even though it wasn't entirely true. I truly needed to express my thoughts, so I stepped aside to have a conversation with someone. Just enough to allow him entry, not a complete invitation. More an instinctual pull he felt entered the room with deliberate slowness, a hint of trepidation in his demeanor, as if he understood the gravity of the moment and the permanence of our choices. I sat at the edge of the bed. While I remained standing, my arms wrapped tightly around myself. A sense of unease has been lingering within me. Recently, he re-Roberted, his gaze fixed on the floor, as if feeling out of place, as though I didn't belong. In every place I found myself, that sensation enveloped me. It was a part of my existence. He continued to speak about school, about the weight of his father's indifference, the sense of artificiality surrounding him. I sensed the depth of his loneliness, even amidst the crowd. I listened intently, nodding in understanding. I softly expressed my understanding repeatedly, and I truly meant it. Yet throughout, I found myself unable to fully grasp it. Cease to be aware of the warmth enveloping us as the night cloaked us in its intimate embrace, accompanied by the gentle whisper of the air, shaping the way his voice quivered in silence, and then it unfolded that delicate, unsettling flutter in my chest, the one that filled me with a sense of shame. The moment I experienced it, it transcended mere empathy. It was more than just comfort. It was an indescribable feeling, something I hesitated to label. I convinced myself it was merely the attention I craved, a longing I couldn't quite articulate. The connection we shared in that moment filled a void within me that had remained empty for years. I reassured myself that it was. He was simply a lonely boy revealing his heart, and I was merely a lonely woman seeking connection. though I listened. Intently, my body remained unconvinced by the deception, as I sensed a stirring deep within. Within me lay something I had concealed for years, perhaps desire. But it was more than that. The desire to be acknowledged was overwhelming. It wasn't physical intimacy I sought, but rather the profound need to be truly seen, selected to experience a sense of significance, to know I was still a person deserving of being cherished. In that moment, Joseph transcended his role as a stepson. He became the sole focus of her world, in a house where no one had truly seen me. For weeks, there was only one who looked beyond the mundane routines, the endless chores and the weary smile I wore. Like armor, he perceived me, and that was what frightened me the most, for I was uncertain if... I found myself torn between retreating and drawing closer, recalling the last moment when Robert's touch held genuine purpose. Almost a year ago, swift and silent, a fleeting kiss devoid of eye contact, merely mechanical in nature. As I lay there afterward, I found myself staring at the ceiling, contemplating the moment when I had transformed into someone who merely checked off boxes. An obligation rather than a longing, I reflected on the milestones he overlooked. Birthdays brought back memories of how he used to hold me tightly, as if he feared losing me. Now it seemed he couldn't even notice when I was there. As I felt it slipping away, memories flooded my mind. Those moments when I wept in the shower, ensuring my sorrow remained unheard, and all the times I crafted my thoughts in silence. Reasons for his emotional withdrawal include fatigue, stress, and a genuine effort to connect, yet he seems to fall short. I ceased my efforts quite some time ago, feeling weary of striving for both of us. Here I stood in my room, facing a young man who had long since shed the title of boyhood. He expressed a sense of being adrift, which made me confront the depths of my own disorientation. Guilt washed over me in waves. This situation felt profoundly wrong. It was impossible. I was the responsible one, the one bound by vows, the one who should have maintained clear boundaries. Yet, the longing within me refused to be silenced. It was concerned with boundaries, with the desire to be wanted, with the need to feel a sense of existence, and in that moment, the silence spoke volumes. What lay between us spoke volumes, far beyond what words could convey. He remained still, his hands never reaching for me. Neither of us had crossed a line, not yet, but emotionally, I had already ventured beyond it, and I was at a loss for how to return after that night. Everything felt irrevocably altered. On the surface, nothing seemed to revert to its previous state, and no one else noticed. I might not have noticed it at first, but deep within me, a change had occurred, something delicate, yet profound. But unmistakable, as if a door had been left ajar, and I hadn't shut it quickly enough. Joseph chose not to revisit our late-night conversation. He remained silent about the knock and the intensity of our gaze. In silence, yet something shifted in the way he gazed at me. There was a softness in his eyes, a kind and gentle warmth that spoke volumes. There was an undeniable curiosity, and each time our paths intertwined, I sensed that unspoken connection lingering in the air. Neither of us dared to name it. He began to spend more time in the kitchen, not hovering, not awkwardly lingering, just whenever I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, he would stroll in and offer his assistance, taking the knife to chop ingredients, with care. Vegetables, stir sauces, taste, whatever I offered, it was met with a smile that lingered just a moment too long, always his. His gaze locked onto mine as if he were on a quest, seeking something hidden within, or perhaps extending, an invitation to a world I had yet to discover. He began to offer me more compliments, but not in a manner that felt inappropriate. A line not yet, but the word lingers. You always carry a delightful scent, and your hair looks truly lovely. It's reverberable how you can transform even the simplest leftovers into something extraordinary. It's the little things that I hold on to dearly. I invested more in them than I ought to have, especially since Robert no longer expressed those sentiments. In fact, Robert didn't even seem to notice when I made a change to my appearance. The moment I decided to embrace my hair again, or when I began to add a touch of mascara to my routine, or when I chose to forego it altogether. She swapped her oversized t-shirts for soft tank tops and fitted pajama shorts, opting for comfort without drawing too much attention. Just enough to feel like I was still a woman, not a mere specter in the hallway. And Joseph noticed. He didn't stare. He simply observed. Yet I noticed the spark in his gaze, the brief hesitation, the unspoken admiration he conveyed. One evening, as he dried the dishes his mother had left behind when he was just 10 years old, he shared a memory that lingered in his heart. He vanished without a trace, leaving his father to navigate the challenges of single parenthood, while she ceased all communication. His voice was flat, as if she had made the decision that I wasn't worth keeping. I was left in a state of confusion, unsure of what to think. As I stood there, my hands damp from the sink, I watched him consume the memory, each moment lingering in the air between us, as if it lingered in his throat, which is why I despise when people depart without a word. It complicates everything. When you think too much, it feels as though you are perpetually at fault. There was something about that moment that unraveled me just a bit. I longed to reach out and touch his hand, to reassure him that he wasn't broken, but I held back. I softly whispered that I was still present, hoping he grasped the depth of my meaning. It transformed into the rhythm of late-night conversations in the kitchen, the fleeting brushes of our hands, the comfortable quiet that envelops us. With that, the balance shifted ever so slightly one fateful night. Robert was away once more, embarking on yet another flight to a different city. Another vacant side of the bed awaited him. Joseph and I found ourselves watching a movie together. Nothing romantic, just a casual evening. In a light-hearted moment, he settled on one end of the couch while I took my place at the opposite end. Initially, it felt like a playful distance, but halfway through, he stretched out his legs, brushing against mine by the end of the movie. His head rested gently on my lap, and I found myself frozen in place. I could have shifted him away. I should have, but I simply didn't. I sat there in the dim light of the living room, his breath warm against my thigh, my fingers gently grazing the surface, the edge of the blanket that enveloped us, and I experienced a profound sense of calm and safety, as if for the very first time, for the first time in ages, someone had selected me not from a sense of duty, but from genuine desire when, as the credits rolled, I chose not to wake him. I allowed him to sleep, just for a little while longer. At last, he stirred, sitting up and rubbing his eyes, mumbling an apology. I simply smiled, and claimed it was fine, yet we both understood it was far from that. We merely feigned acceptance. After that, everything felt more intense, as if the air between us was laden with an unspoken secret. I found myself glancing at my reflection with increasing frequency, applying lip balm in anticipation of his arrival, selecting gentler, cozier sweaters garments that embrace my form just enough, not for allure, but for affirmation that it wasn't. It wasn't just about desiring him. It was about the deep yearning to feel desired, and he had a way of making me feel that. One late night, my phone buzzed, and Robert is already in bed next to me, softly snoring. Then, a text from Joseph arrives. It was truly delightful to witness such happiness today. I found myself captivated, my heart swelling as I gazed at the screen. My heart raced as I stared at the message. I couldn't bring myself to respond, yet I hesitated to erase it, holding on to it for just a moment longer. I read it 3 times, then placed my phone face down on the nightstand. The following morning, as Robert enjoyed his shower, I took the opportunity to open the thread. To my surprise, there were additional messages, small ones I had previously overlooked. Before dinner was truly delightful this evening. I hope you're resting well. You deserve it. The soothing warmth of your presence brings me solace. I appreciate your company, even as the weight of guilt constricts my throat. Acid. I understood the implications, the way it would resonate when spoken aloud. Yet I found myself unprepared for the reality of it. I longed to halt this yearning. I craved that flutter once more. I desired to be seen by someone, not merely in the role of a wife or a stepmother, yet a woman who possessed much to give, a woman who... It still held significance before Robert re-entered the room. I erased the messages. Every single one of my hands trembled as I did it, not out of fear of being discovered, but because a part of me was reluctant to let go. I wished to release them, for those words, those gentle, deliberate, and contemplative words hold a weight of their own, held more significance for me than anything Robert had expressed in recent months, and in that instant, I came to understand the depth of my dissent. It occurred once more, that gentle knock resonating softly. Cautious, much like the previous instance, yet this time I was wide awake. Having been lying there, I lay there for hours, gazing at the ceiling, attuned to the sound of Robert's shallow breathing beside me. He had returned home that evening. He set his suitcase down by the door and pressed a gentle kiss to the top of my head, as if Roberting the start of a shift. Our words were few, barely more than a whisper. More than 10 words echoed in the stillness of the night. He was snoring softly, while I lay wide awake, my pulse pounding in my ears. Then, the knock came. Once. Then again, I already knew who it was. I didn't even hesitate this time. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could, careful not to disturb the man who hadn't genuinely connected with me in months. I reached for my robe, opened the door just a crack, and there he was. Joseph, standing barefoot in the soft glow of the evening light. A t-shirt and sweats, hair tousled, eyes weighed down by an unfamiliar heaviness. In that moment, suspended, between trepidation and assurance, we stood in silence. The atmosphere surrounding us crackled with an electric tension, palpable and still, until his voice was low, almost a whisper, yet it struck me like a thunderclap. I must confess, something important. I believe I have developed feelings for you. In that moment, I felt as though time stood still, and the hallway seemed to stretch endlessly around us. We were enveloped in a tunnel, vast and infinite, brimming with unspoken words and hidden truths. I remained silent, unable to voice the thoughts swirling within me. She gazed at him, and he met her gaze with equal intensity. His expression was neither smug nor cocky. Anything twisted was vulnerable. His hands trembled slightly at his side. His chest rose and fell, as if he had just leaped from a great height. I should have closed the door. I should have sent him away. I ought to have reminded him of my identity and of our shared history, but I chose not to. Instead, I took a step forward. I stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind me, leaving just the two of us in that serene silence. The chasm that lay between the bedroom of my crumbling marriage and the vast expanse of guilt surrounding our impending actions was something I couldn't ignore. As I reached out to him, he didn't reciprocate, yet the intensity of our locked gazes conveyed everything that needed to be said. All the unspoken words we had tiptoed around for weeks hung in the air, and I could feel the tightness in my throat as the moment approached. It wasn't a game. This was no longer a mere fantasy. This was reality, and it filled me with dread because, in that instant, my thoughts were not on Robert nor on the concepts of right or wrong. I wasn't considering the repercussions. All I could sense was the warmth of being truly seen and felt by someone at last. The choice was mine, and that was all it required. I parted my lips to utter a word, yet silence enveloped me, emerged with a sigh, a warmth enveloping me, a deep longing for all that I had kept inside for so long. He took a step closer, lingering in the space between us, his presence palpable yet unyielding. "I'm sorry," he murmured, the weight of his words hanging in the air. She whispered, "I know I shouldn't feel this way. I didn't mean to, but I can't pretend." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding so fiercely that I was certain he could hear it. I wished to urge him to cease, to turn away, to let this moment fade into oblivion. Yet I refrained, for beneath the surface I yearned for him to remember. I desired for him to hold significance in my life. I longed for someone to truly understand, and there, in that narrow hallway, surrounded by the rest of the world, I felt the weight of that desire. The world lay in slumber, devoid of an audience, and I allowed it to unfold, not as a performance, not yet, but the yielding, the emotional unraveling, the instant when I ceased fleeing from the undeniable truth that I desired him, not in a hasty or thoughtless manner, but with a profound urgency, the profound longing for connection that lingers. After years of solitude, we shared no kisses, no touches. We simply stood there mere inches apart, inhaling the same weighty air. And in that profound silence, everything shifted the following morning. Nothing felt right. The sun blazed too fiercely, the floor chilled against bare feet, and the air felt heavy and oppressive. Yet I navigated the house as if submerged, feeling heavy and detached, each gesture laden with the burden of unfulfilled possibilities, yet somehow feeling irrevocably advanced. I found myself unable to meet his gaze. I found it difficult to muster the courage to venture downstairs. Instead, I lingered in the bedroom, feigning the task of folding laundry. I found myself caught in a delicate balance, straining to catch any sounds from the kitchen, my heart fluttering with both hope and trepidation at the thought of hearing his voice. Yet, it remained silent. It was eerily silent. When I finally descended the stairs, I found Robert in the kitchen, savoring a cup of coffee. As he scrolled through his phone, he glanced up briefly to offer a casual morning before returning to his screen. Whatever captured more of his attention than I ever could, I surveyed my surroundings, but there was no indication of Joseph has already departed. I inquired with Robert, but he didn't even glance up. Do you think so? He likely went for a run or something. You know his habits. I nodded, though I didn't truly agree. Understand that he was no longer the same after last night. Robert kissed me on the... He pressed his lips gently against her forehead before heading off to work. A fleeting gesture, tender yet devoid of deeper significance. Nothing that belonged to us remained. He was gone, and I was left alone with the silence. I walked into the kitchen and poured. I found myself with a cup of coffee I didn't desire, seated at the table, my gaze fixed on the empty chair where Joseph should have been. Typically, I found myself seated, yet the tension lingered in the atmosphere, as if it had not dissipated, but rather settled into the surroundings. Walls, I experienced a mix of disgust and shame, yet there was also a sense of vulnerability as it transcended mere physical boundaries. What nearly transpired was centered around what remained unfulfilled and the depth of my yearning for it. I was acutely conscious of the sounds emanating from upstairs, the creak of the floorboards, the subtle shifts in the shadows, had me on high alert, straining to catch the faintest hint of footsteps approaching. The door creaked open, and I found myself yearning for any hint that he might descend and gaze at me as he had the night before. Yet, time slipped away, and hours stretched on. At last, I caught sight of him that afternoon as he descended for water, his silence speaking volumes. He didn't glance in my direction, nor did he acknowledge my presence by the sink. Instead, he simply reached for a glass and filled it, drank and ascended the stairs without a glance, without hesitation, simply vanished as if I felt unseen once more, as if I were a mere shadow, and that pain cut deeper than anything else. For one fleeting night, I experienced the warmth of being seen, chosen, and wanted. Now, I find myself feeling discarded, as if that moment has slipped away. The moment lingered in my mind as a mistake, one that haunted me in the days that followed. He seemed to retreat further into his solitude, barely emerging from his room. When he responded, it was swift and subdued. He averted his gaze, and his answer was brief. No. No more assistance in the kitchen. No more late-night conversations. No more lingering gazes that spoke volumes. All the words we hesitated to voice lingered in the air as he vanished without a trace. I found myself unraveling, questioning every thought. Was it all just a figment of my imagination? I found myself analyzing his words, his looks, and his very presence. Was I truly the only one who felt this way? It had all been crafted in my mind, and the guilt twisted deeper. It was not solely due to Robert. Rather, it was the confusion of which pain was more profound, the humiliation of what nearly transpired, or the lingering sorrow of its absence. Taken from me so abruptly, I found myself longing for him, not in a romantic or sexual way, but for the connection we shared. I realized I lost the connection, the part of myself that thrived in his presence, the version that felt truly alive and awake. One evening, I discovered him in the backyard, seated alone on the edge of the porch. I stood gazing into the void, stepping outside with deliberate slowness, my heart racing in anticipation. He looked up. His face was pale, his eyes tense and unreadable. "We need to forget last night," he said, his voice devoid of emotion before I could respond. It felt distant, a mistake lingering in the air as he stood up and walked past me, retreating into the shadows. The house, and just like that, whatever existed between us faded away, not with a dramatic finale, but rather quietly. Was it loneliness? Was it necessary? Or was it something darker? The questions linger in my mind, haunting me with their uncertainty. I find myself repeating the question, hoping that with each iteration, the answer will finally reveal itself. Yet it remains elusive. It doesn't seem to me that there is a singular answer. Countless nights have been spent replaying everything in my mind. The depth of his gaze when he confessed his feelings for me, as if the hallway itself had shrunk to a singular moment in time. Just the two of us, the way my breath hitched, and I didn't utter a word of refusal, nor did I pause. I didn't hold back. I allowed it to unfold, even if it was merely through words. Even if I ventured into uncharted territory, crossing a line that feels irrevocable. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, I find myself questioning whether regret truly lingers within me. That's the aspect I find most challenging, the uncertainty. What do you call it when something feels both wrong and right at the same time? The same moment that evokes both shame and a vibrant sense of being alive, I've devoted for years. I have navigated this house like a ghost, fulfilling my duties and maintaining the facade, all while wearing a smile that conceals the turmoil within. I felt the need to smile and say I was fine, even though I was anything but, if only for a fleeting moment. In that instant, I transcended invisibility. I was acknowledged, I was experienced, not in a tangible sense, but in a deeper, more profound manner. The manner in which one might easily pass judgment, yet in a more profound and subtle way, left me more shaken than any physical contact ever could. And now that it's gone, and I find myself missing it, missing him. Not out of love, nor from a desire for what once was. There was something about him, a way he looked at me, that made me feel significant, as if I truly mattered, as if my voice was worth hearing, worth noticing. Robert never gave me that feeling. It has been years since someone looked at me like that. Perhaps I am to blame. Maybe I surrendered too quickly. Perhaps I invested too deeply for too long, leaving nothing of myself for him to desire. I'm uncertain. All I truly know is that I feel an emptiness, as if something has shattered within me, and I am unable to restore it. Together, Joseph was right. It was a mistake, yet it held a certain honesty that was undeniable, exceedingly candid, and I believe that was what frightened him. It frightened me as well. For once you encounter a truth so profound and feel its weight, returning to pretense becomes impossible. You cannot simply confine it to the shadows, and return to light-hearted conversations over coffee and lingering, chilly kisses before the day begins. Moments that linger in your memory. What it feels like to be desired is an unforgettable experience, and the longing to reciprocate that desire lingers in my thoughts. I find myself pondering whether I conjured these feelings within myself, What if I allowed myself to lean into an illusion, driven by a longing for warmth in a home that had long since turned cold? It was some time ago, yet it felt undeniably genuine. Perhaps it wasn't the healthiest or most appropriate situation, but it was real. And that's what adds to the complexity, as readers are drawn to narratives that are straightforward and unambiguous. Villains typically have clear victims, but this situation was anything but straightforward. It involved two individuals, both deeply flawed and broken in their own ways, exploring various avenues of solace in an unexpected setting, and I loathe the delicate nature of it all. How swiftly ethics can waver. It bends when your heart begins to ache. I believed I was stronger than this. I thought I understood my boundaries, yet here I am. The truth is, you often don't realize where your boundaries lie until you find yourself on the other side of them. I haven't shared this with anyone. Not my friends, not my husband, not Joseph, not even in the quiet moments of reflection. It has lingered within me, silently and painfully, for months without even the faintest hint of release. Suppressed, concealed, tucked away beneath courteous grins and neatly arranged garments, and light-hearted exchanges that seem trivial. Yet here I am, sharing them with you. Perhaps you comprehend. Perhaps you have experienced it as well. Perhaps you have walked that path too. That poignant void between right and wrong where the solitude resonates with intensity. It silences the echoes of your own critique, where the deepest desire is to be acknowledged, to be embraced, to be comprehended, even if it's just by. Have you ever found yourself drawn to someone in a way that felt forbidden? Have you ever experienced a fleeting moment where your thoughts stray into unfamiliar territory, despite never daring to act on those feelings? It's a delicate dance of desire and restraint, isn't it? Have you ever envisioned something not out of a desire to disrupt your life, but simply because you crave the sensation of being truly alive? Have you ever found yourself standing before someone who was never meant to be yours, yet you still felt an undeniable desire for them? If so, you understand the complexity of such emotions. Even just once, I long to hear your story, not for the theatrics, not for the whispers, but for the truth. Because narratives like this are never straightforward. They exist in shades of gray and white. They are constructed from layers of heartache and unspoken words, along with desires that remain unfulfilled. And for years, I have been pretending that everything is fine. But these raw and uncomfortable truths may resonate with you if you've ever experienced something similar. Gaze into the mirror, pondering the person you've transformed into and the journey that led you here. Subscribe to the captivating tale of unexpected betrayal. This is the space where we unveil the narratives that remain unspoken, the tangled tales, the hidden truths, the ones that often go unheard. Provide a resolution that feels satisfying, as life often leaves us with unresolved threads. The individual who shatters your heart is often the one who awakens your spirit, reminding you of the vibrancy of life. Sometimes, merely existing is not about action, but rather about the profound experience of being. What's truly right is the exhilarating sensation of finally experiencing emotions after enduring years of numbness.